Welcome to NARAL's The Morning After. Each Thursday, our podcast brings you the latest on reproductive health care, progressive politics, and the fight to keep abortion safe and legal. NARAL's The Morning After is a production of NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ProChoiceOH. Enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Jamie.
I'm Amanda.
Welcome back, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So you were last here last year when you were starting a new project.
Yes.
You want to tell us about how that's gone?
Yes. So I came here last year to talk about prochoicecats.com, and at that time it was in its infancy. It's been a year. We've grown. It's become a really exciting project. Last year I sold a bunch of t-shirts and stickers and things to raise money for a pro-choice billboard here in Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
So we did that in November. I put some pro-abortion, pro-choice messaging on the e-billboard at Spring and 3rd, just a few blocks from the State House.
So an e-billboard is a billboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's an electronic billboard. So instead of being just one static image, it's an electronic image and they rotate. There's different images. So no one ad is up there for longer than a few seconds. So I had all kinds of different images and advertisements. And one of the main reasons I did it that way was, number one, it was cheaper to go with electronic than a regular billboard. Number two, if we did a static billboard, I was concerned about vandalism.
Okay.
And so with the e-billboard, I felt like that was less likely to happen, and it would be a little bit more difficult to deface an electronic monitor versus just a regular billboard.
Right.
So it went well. We were able to pay for a week. It's $1,000 per week.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
Remind me to go into the billboard.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what?
Can't put one of those in my backyard.
So we could only do it for a week, and the donors were asking why can't we do this longer? What's going on? How much more money do you need?
And you're like, hey, if you want to pay for it.
Please give me $1,000. And they were like, oops, no, sorry, goodbye. So I decided, okay, let's do it again this year in 2016. And a lot of the donors from last year were on board. They bought more stuff. And I've had some new people contribute as well. And there have been new products. We went from just doing t-shirts and stickers to doing heating pads, doing more stickers, different stickers that said things, you know, like leave my pussy alone and be my cunt muffin, fuck your laws, like just all kinds of things featuring real cats from Instagram. And that's like another component of this is my cat has a presence on Instagram. And over the years, I've found more and more famous cats who are pro-choice. So I have an artist who actually like renders images of these real cats, and then we use them on the products with all these sassy sayings. And the most recent project or product that we came out with was the crocheted catnip tampon toys.
Okay.
Made by a local artist here. We partnered up, and it's exactly what it sounds like. She takes.
Oh, hold on. You say it's exactly like it sounds like, as if that's a thing. What is this?
So she takes little tea bags and she stuffs them with catnip.
Okay.
And she rolls them up.
Okay.
And then she stuffs them into these crocheted tampon molds that she's made. And then she, you know, seals them up, and there's a string at the bottom. And sometimes like she'll use white and red yarn to make it look like a bloody tampon. And it sounds wild, but the cats actually love it. And
There's catnip in it. I mean,
of course, but the design and everything of it, it's like there's the string, there's the end that kind of looks like a mouse. So it really is designed for cats, but an aesthetic for human humor. So that's been the thing I've been pushing a lot lately is those, because people are obsessed.
Okay, yeah. The crocheted tampon shaped catnip holder. I mean, that's as if there was some feminist checklist. It's like, how many boxes can we check in this?
Crafting, periods, cats,
Yeah.
cats getting high on catnip.
And the
What more?
fact that proceeds go to pay
Pay
for
for
a
a billboard.
billboard promoting an abortion provider.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that we're about to talk about that we got to see last night, and when they hear this description, their heads are just going to explode.
Well, they didn't. Their heads kind of exploded over even the billboards last year. I mean, Created Eagle got so mad about the billboard that they had to drive their billboard truck up and like park it on the street in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a whole talk about how, well, they make their own mobile billboard so they can go wherever they want and they don't have to be controlled by the billboard company. I'm like, you know what? The shit we want to say on a billboard doesn't have to be controlled by a billboard company because we're not being jerks like they are.
Okay, so before we get into the antis, we do just want to complete the plug here. Prochoicecats.com. And on Facebook, if you search, it's facebook.com/prochoicecats. So you can check out the stuff, order it. She's wearing a tank top right now from the line. So pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then the antis we got to meet last night at the city council hearing. You want to talk about that?
Not meet necessarily because we've met them.
We got to spend
some quality time with.
You know, I was saying that these sort of meetings are like going to church where half the congregation just hates the other half.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like in dress clothes and you file in and then, you know, you have to like set up folding chairs and stuff. And then sit there and just glare at each other. So you want to talk about how that went?
Well, so it's interesting because, you know, city council doesn't have set rules on how you have to do these kinds of things. You know, so when, you know, Councilmember Brown came to us and said she wanted to introduce this.
Elizabeth Brown.
You know, we said, and she's like, well, we could do it a bunch of different ways. We, of course, said, let's do it in the most transparent, the most open, the most, you know, welcoming way, because frankly, number one, those are the values we believe in. We know we're right. You know, they can scream all day long about how this is unconstitutional. In the McClellan decision, I think we read it last week on the show.
Right.
You know, it actually said, "Hey, Massachusetts, if you want to do something, you should do something like New York."
And this thing is a buffer zone outside clinics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, last night they said, don't use the word buffer zone. It's a 15-foot area where you cannot follow and harass someone. So the protesters can still be within 15 feet and do their thing, but they cannot follow people and yell things at them. They can yell, they just can't follow someone. That's when you break the law.
So this is within 15 feet of really any healthcare facility, which is going to include abortion providers.
Yes. I think it's reproductive healthcare facilities. So it'll include places like, you know, family planning centers and those kinds of things, even Columbus Public Health, because there's even somebody there last night from Columbus Public Health talking about how occasionally they get people in, mostly around when one partner gets diagnosed with an STD, you know, because tempers can flare.
Right.
And so the woman from Columbus Public Health actually testified yesterday about how this will help them protect their providers from these partners or you know, people in their facility as well who are harassing their patients or their providers inside the facility. So, you know, it's not just happening at abortion clinics, it's happening other places. We see it in Circleville. It's a Planned Parenthood that doesn't do abortion services, and the same protesters, the DeMint family that was there last night, protest the Circleville Planned Parenthood as well. So yeah, it was an interesting night. They started with opening from like the lawyers and all those kinds of things about what it is and what it'll do and all those kinds of things.
And the it you're referring to is Ordinance 1458 for the city of Columbus.
Yes. And so and then they took testimony from either side, 3 minutes apiece, back and forth until we ran out of time. I think we got through 7 or so, maybe 8.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
People, but and there were all kinds of, and the other biggest part is this is a City of Columbus ordinance. This is Columbus City Council. You know, when we're in the State House and somebody comes in from Pennsylvania to testify, we're all like, really? And so what was really interesting is of the 7 or 8 people who went on our side, one of them, I think, resided outside of Columbus, and she worked in Columbus, so she had a connection to the city. Only 2 of the people who testified against it lived or worked in the city of Columbus.
Right.
Most of them were Hebron and Zanesville and Circleville and
Westerville.
places. Like most of these places way far outside of Columbus. I mean, these
Right.
people drive more than an hour to harass people at Planned Parenthood every day.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
good life.
I mean, these folks do not live inside this county, let
No.
alone the city.
Exactly.
And probably would not visit the city of Columbus on any sort of regular basis, if not for the sole purpose of coming and harassing patients and abortion clinic staff.
Yes.
They stand outside with signs and yell and scream. So, you know, they were testifying about how they feel that this is going to, you know, in their words, violate their right to free speech. And, you know, the city attorney's office said, you know, this does not violate free speech. And, you know, if you're coming and you want to pray against abortion, if you want to distribute pamphlets, information, you know, there was one woman, the last person who spoke against the thing, had gone to a clinic for an abortion procedure and changed her mind and felt that presence was a positive impact, which, you know, she's entitled to that opinion, but that interaction that she had would not be banned by this ordinance. No.
They would have still been able to do all of that stuff. And that's the biggest difference here is that, you know, yes, you know, McCullen struck down a true buffer zone. Nobody can be within 30 feet of an abortion clinic. So that's not what we're doing, you know. So we're doing a 15-foot. You can't do these behaviors.
Right.
You can still speak. Actually, one of the best moments was the second to last person on the anti side who testified was our buddy Coach Dave, and he doesn't have a low voice volume. Like he cannot have a normal like room voice. I feel like I was going back to like when I was hanging out with
Dave
kids.
Daubenmire.
Yes. Where it's like use your inside voice. He doesn't have the inside voice. So of course he's screaming into the microphone the same way he screams outside of the clinic.
Right.
Screaming that there isn't evidence of need of this as he provides evidence of the need for this. But I think it was Councilmember Pricilla Tyson who asked after that one, like, so would it still be okay if he stood outside the clinic and said those kinds of things? And the city attorney was like, yes, of course, it's free speech protected. Even if he said them really, really loudly.
Right.
And the city attorney was like, yes, even if he was screaming them at the top of his lungs.
Right.
So this is not a violation of your free speech. This is 100%.
At any volume.
At any volume. No. Volume is not an impact on free speech. So,
right.
But really,
it's physical proximity and the harassing and threatening nature of the things that they say.
Yes. And
that's the factor, you know. And I've compared this to there's the old standard about how free speech means that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. This isn't them yelling fire in a crowded theater. This is saying I want you to burn.
Yes.
You know, that's where it crosses the line in this instance when they come up and they threaten somebody, you know, you're going to be set on fire.
Yeah.
That sort of hate speech is what we have heard from people like Dave Daubenmire, who testified. And your testimony had a poster that was a visual with two portrayals of protest. And one of them was people showing their poster, showing their signs from a respectable distance where everything was still totally legible and all of that. Alternating with a shot that one of our colleagues took with a cell phone camera.
Yes.
That was like a close-up of his mouth and his beard. And, you know, it wasn't taken with the zoom lens. It was so close that you could count the hairs on his chin. That's how close he gets to people when he's screaming at them. And it's not polite what he's saying. No. So that is the difference. If you're standing back and you've got your signs and you're handing out your, you know, pamphlets and whatever, and you're praying, that's okay. But when you're standing, you know, so close that someone can count the the hairs on your chin, that's when you're way too close to somebody. And that's how close Dave Daubenmire gets to people going into abortion clinics.
Yes.
That is not acceptable behavior.
No, and I mean, there's video of that. Those are still shot from a video, and what you can't see on the film on this shot is what he was saying at that point. So he was that close to Michelle and screaming that she was a wicked, evil, vile woman. How could she say things like that? That's the most wicked thing I've ever heard in my life, because she told a very confused immigrant woman that they don't actually kill babies in Planned Parenthood, because she was getting very scared and confused. She was not a native English speaker. She did not understand fully what Dave was saying to her, because he was trying to tell her not to go in Planned Parenthood because they kill babies in there.
Right.
And so Michelle was trying to, lie this woman's fears, and that really just got under his skin. He can't control himself when he gets that upset about something, and that's exactly what happened that day.
Right.
So, but Councilmember Liz Brown gets our "That's What She Said" this week for her drop mic moment in the hearing. So one of the other frequent protesters outside of Planned Parenthood is the Johnston family. They are a Duggar-style
of Muskingum
family.
County, which is not in Franklin County.
No.
It's not in the city of Columbus.
Exactly.
So they drove like an hour.
Yeah, a little over. Yeah,
across the state to come and testify before the city of Columbus.
Yes. Well, and they come with their 10 kids, 2 or 3 times a week to harass people outside of the abortion clinic. So Elizabeth Johnston is the mom of the family, and she testified, and basically her entire testimony was slander and slamming of Councilmember Brown. I mean,
right.
It was, and then slandering and slamming the special duty officer that stands outside of Planned Parenthood and protects the patients every day. So, and the entire time she referred to Councilmember Brown as Mrs. Brown. And so afterwards, as she was told that she was done and she could sit down, Councilmember Brown corrected her and told her that it's Ms. Brown, not Mrs. Brown. And yeah, I think everybody in the room was like, yeah, because yes, I mean, she's got her, family. That is her family name, her father's name. That is not her husband's name.
Right.
And that is her identity.
Yeah.
And she claims it very proudly.
To this conservative Christian, the idea of a married woman not going by Mrs.
Yes.
Whatever your husband's name is
like
made her head freeze.
Yeah. I mean, especially because in the quiverful culture, I mean, the woman just becomes a servant of her family. Right. I mean, she's not allowed to say no to sex, which is why so many babies, not allowed to use birth control. She is the caretaker of the home and the caretaker of the children. So, it is kind of the antithesis of like a feminist ideal. So, and just, if freely chosen, is fine for her to do, but not to shove on other people. Right. So that was the "That's What She Said" moment of the hearing. It was fabulous, and also just in general, Councilmember Elizabeth Brown, taking a stand on this so hard, because when we started having conversations, I prepped her as well as you can. Until you see these people actually in person in action, you can't really fully understand what it's like. And we made sure like, this is what's going to happen. They're going to come out. They're going to say these things. This is what's going to, and she was like, this is more important than that. This is about protecting people. People, as she says over and over and over again, people should be able to access their healthcare services without harassment and intimidation. Right. You don't stand outside of somebody's doctor's office and say, don't get that root canal. It's not good for you. Like, we all would think that's ridiculous. You're laughing because it's ridiculous. But that's exactly what they do outside of abortion clinics every single day. So yeah. And your testimony was amazing, because you talked about how, like, what it's like outside of Founders. You want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah. I went up there, and even though I work at a different clinic, I spent some time at Founders Women's Health Center, about 13 months working there, and I oversaw our patient escorts, so the people who volunteer to walk patients from their car into the clinic. And the reason why we have to have those people is because of how intimidating and scary some of the protesters are outside of Founders. We certainly wouldn't have been volunteering our time doing this if it weren't necessary. And, you know, there were so many different examples that I had from my personal experiences, but when I went up there, I wanted to talk about what I've seen patients and volunteers deal with. So I talked about, you know, the patients who have come to us and said, well, this protester grabbed me or followed me to my car and made me feel really uncomfortable. And I pulled some statements from a woman who actually came in to the clinic and wrote down what a protester did to her. And basically she said a woman tried to hand her a pamphlet. She said no, the woman grabbed her arm. So the girl got scared and tried to run away, but the woman yanked her jacket sleeve. And the girl just kept running. She made it to her car. She gets into her car, and that same protester, along with another protester, approaches her car and continues to harass her. And that really upset the woman. And so we asked her if she wanted to file a police report, and she said no, because she didn't want anyone knowing that she was at this abortion clinic. And that's a common theme we see with patients, is that they are really offended and hurt and upset by what's been done to them by these protesters, but they just want this day to be over. They do not want to file a police report and have to deal with the ramifications, not to mention their personal information will then become public record. So there's all kinds of reasons why police reports aren't filed when they do these things. And I also talked about a volunteer who was shoved by a protester, and the protester put her foot on the back of her shoe and ripped her shoe off. And when the volunteer turned around to say, like, hey, this woman's laughing, and just thought that it was hilarious that she had upset this escort. So the escort called the police, tried to, you know, file a report, and by then the protester had left and nothing really came of it. So even when people do go to the police about these things, usually nothing really happens. And so I wanted to convey in my testimony that, like, just because when the police are there or the media is there and the protesters are acting very quiet and peaceful and respectful, that's not really who they are. And when there's no one in power around, that is when these people do their most aggressive work. So, you know, a few of the anti-choicers who went up to testify against this ordinance, they all kept saying, like, where's the proof? No one's been convicted. No one's been arrested. Like, no one came out to watch us outside of the clinic, so you don't even know what it's like. They were saying this to Elizabeth Brown, and it's like, actually, yeah, her staffers did come out and they saw a different side of the protesters than what they really are. And there were even people around who told the staffers, like, this isn't really how they normally act. No. Like, they're putting on a show because you're here. That the things that the anti-choicers were saying last night, it's like it doesn't line up. Of course, there's no arrest because no one wanted to file a report and be affiliated with having an abortion. And that can be really dangerous for patients as well. If they have family members who don't know what's going on, or their partner is an abusive individual, like, it could put them in danger to file this report and have family members or lovers find out that they were at this clinic. Yeah.
Well, and also, you know, when you file a police report, you're kind of entering into a record that you and whoever this protester are had some interaction. And so now you're sort of committing yourself to have to talk to the police about them, to, you know, maybe have to, you know, go through some legal proceeding with this person that, you know, is standing there screaming hateful things at you. And so that's not something that people want to do. No. You know, they didn't come to an abortion clinic just to get into a fight with some protester. You know, there was one young woman who was testifying against the ordinance. She's been a protester, and she was talking about how she hands out pamphlets and Bibles and all of that. I'm like, nobody goes to an abortion clinic to get a Bible, you know?
Go to a hotel, get it one from the Gideons.
Also, the Bible doesn't really say anything about abortion or anything against abortion. So it's like, this Bible has nothing to do with what this person is going into this clinic for. And it certainly doesn't have medical advice or information.
Right.
So
yeah.
I've
we
never
were talking about
that.
this last night. The state of Ohio has this waiting period.
Yeah.
And, by the time a woman gets into a clinic, and so the waiting period means that you have to go for 2 separate appointments. By the time you finish that first appointment, you've found out that you're pregnant, made your own decision to call an abortion provider, called, some provider up, sat through a phone screening, which takes, I don't know, half an hour, figured out a time when they can schedule something, take time off of work, figured out transportation, maybe figured out childcare, gotten yourself to the abortion facility, sat through the first day's worth of screening and answered questions and, gathered information. You probably have to watch some sort of little video about what the procedure is going to be, had a consultation on cost, thought to yourself, had to do an ultrasound, figured out what the cost is going to be, how you're going to come up with that money, which is hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
By the time you go through all this, you've made up your mind.
Yeah.
You are not going to need additional time, which you're always welcome to take.
Yeah.
You're not going to need somebody's religious pamphlet, because by this point in time, you've gone through so many steps to figure out what you want to do. And at any point in time, any person can change their mind.
Yes.
They don't need a religious pamphlet. They don't need someone praying for them. They don't need extra time to think about it. They know what they want, and they didn't drive there for a Bible.
Yeah. Well, and I think there was actually a case at Founders, I don't know, now maybe 5-6 years ago, where an abusive partner had actually forced a woman to go to Founders. He actually had a gun. They found out later he had a gun in his glove box and was forcing her to go to Founders and have an abortion. And she walked into the clinic and she leaned over to the staff member at the check-in desk and was like, he's forcing me to do this. He has a gun. Like, I don't want to do this. Help me.
Right.
And, if you listen to the antis, their whole story would probably be from there. Well, then they tied her down and they made her do it. And, because that's what they think happens in there. What actually happened was they whisked her back. They're like, oh, we have a room available for you right away. Let's start your consultation. We have to do this by herself.
Right.
He can't come with you. So let's, go back and do your consultation. They took her back there. They called the police. The police came. They arrested the guy.
They had her in a safe space.
Yeah, they moved her into
room.
a safe space, a safe room. They called the police. The police came. He went out. He had gone out to the parking lot at that point.
Right.
Arrested him, found the gun. He was arrested. He was prosecuted. And that's what happens.
Right.
Women who come into the clinic not knowing what they want to do get counseling about whether this is the right decision for them. Jackie Malstow, a Med Students for Choice, testified yesterday, and she's like, that's my duty as a healthcare provider to fully inform and counsel my patients and make sure that whatever procedure they're getting is the one that they want to have.
They give them accurate information inside the clinic, not biased stuff outside the clinic.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you're going in for a medical procedure, let's trust the medical provider inside the facility, not some coach or well-meaning mom or whatever outside the clinic. So,
and I can confirm, having worked at several clinics and toured, I mean, I've been through at least 4 clinics in the last few years and seen how they do things. And the whole point of having a patient sit down for her consultation or her education session is to go over questions such as, does the person who got you pregnant know that you're here? Is this really what you want to do? Are you afraid of what they'll do if you don't, do this procedure, or if you go through with your pregnancy? Like we go through a list of questions and have a conversation. And, we even say, like, you can schedule your appointment, but if you don't want to come back, you don't have to. You don't ever have to come back here. So no one is forcing them. And we certainly want to figure out if they are being coerced, because if they are, we need to address that. And we're certainly not going to do their procedure if we believe that she's being coerced. So, if she goes through all of that and tells us, no, this is what I want to do, and then she comes back after that 24-hour waiting period, like, I mean, she's gotten everything that she needs, and the people outside aren't really going to help her.
No. I mean, they're just going to make her feel shame. I mean, And luckily, I don't know that we've encountered this in Columbus, but there are other clinics where they have protesters who specifically show up in the afternoon. Most of our protesters come in the morning because they know most of the patients go in the morning and then they kind of take off. Some clinics have actually reported they've started seeing protesters show up specifically in the afternoon. So the people coming out of the clinic have already had an abortion. There's no counseling to be done at that point. The whole point of the protesters showing up in the afternoon is to shame the crap out of the women as they walk out of the facility. Do you know what you just did? You just murdered your baby, all these things. So, when we haven't seen that here, but like that's the point of these people.
What on earth are they hoping to gain from that? That's
personal satisfaction that they're jerks. I don't know.
That's
but
insane.
Yeah, so it's harassment, it's intimidation. It's made to make women feel as crappy as possible about the decision that they know is the best one for them and their families. And so
it's not a figment of people's imaginations. This harassment actually takes place.
Yes.
One last protester who testified yesterday that I want to mention was Mark Harrington of Created Equal.
Yes.
We've on our podcast, we've said regularly, check the show notes for something. This is something that you absolutely do need to check the show notes. Go to our blog, prochoiceohio.com. We'll put up a picture of the postcard that he sent. Created Equal has been mailing postcards with doctors' pictures and, home address, home information, mailing out these postcards along with graphic pictures of, whatever they feel like throwing on there. And mailed them to doctors' neighbors, mailed them to neighborhoods in the Dayton area, in the Columbus area. We've gotten calls from people who live in, Bexley, who live in Whitehall, and they just keep getting these postcards in the mail. And, he stood up there and talked about how people just don't understand it, and these are peaceful protests and all that. And we had a poster-sized blow-up of one of the postcards that he sends out. And Created Equal, they've got a whole team of interns. I'm sure they're listening to this podcast too.
Probably.
And, they have made, they really have taken harassment up to the next step, not just with the postcards and the trucks, but also by bringing their display to both college campuses and high school campuses. Where they really have perfected a shove it in their face sort of tactic, nowhere near an abortion provider, just at a high school. And regularly we'll see in the news where they get so belligerent with people that they provoke fights. And if somebody takes any sort of physical action against them, then they will call the police and file charges against somebody for interacting with their protest that they took out into some community.
And that they egged somebody into doing. And I mean, even last week, when I noticed, because we also peruse all their stuff as well, that because they had a whole new set of interns they were training last week. So one of the trainings was going to the neighborhood of it's a Founders provider in Blacklick. I can't remember their name. But one of the doctors at Founders that lives in Blacklick. And so their interns were actually walking the neighborhood and handing out the Killer Among Us postcards that you can go.
Dr. Schaefer, probably.
Yes, it was Dr. Schaefer. Yeah. There it is. And it's summer. Kids are out of school. So in all of these neighborhoods, there were like kids playing in the front yard. And if your kid was playing in the front yard, the Created Equal intern handed your 7-year-old this postcard with, the bloody fetus picture and a picture of a person that says this person's killing babies. And so on their Facebook page, they had 1 million people from this neighborhood, like yelling and screaming at them for handing this stuff out to their children. But, this is the kind of behavior that they constantly engage in. And so then you see Mark Harrington up there yesterday, like, we just want to peacefully protest. We don't do anything bad. And they were all, it was funny. I mean, I've never seen Mark Harrington and Seth in anything but their black Created Equal t-shirts.
I know.
And they were all in like button-up polos and khaki pants. And Coach Dave Daubenmire, I've never seen him. He has this hat he always wears. It's a red and blue hat with a red cross on it that he wears. I've actually never seen his hair before. And he didn't have his hat on. He was clean shaven, and again in a polo shirt and khaki pants.
I'm telling you, it's like going to church where half the congregation hates the other half.
It really is. So, they dressed differently. They tried to act differently. Although several of them, Dave just can't control himself.
He can't. He has a very short fuse. And the fact that city council was like asking appropriate questions to the city attorney's office during the hearing, which prevented them from having additional time to testify. I mean, he was grumbling in the back like, when are we going to get a chance to testify?
Yeah, he actually cut off a member of city council who was asking a question, like, when are we going to get to testify?
Right.
So Dave gets our walk of shame for all over the place yesterday.
So last night, just to wrap this up, it was council members Mitchell Brown, Elizabeth Brown, Pricilla Tyson, Shannon Hardin, and Jaiza Page.
Yeah.
And so Zach Klein and Michael Stinziano were not present, but they will be there on Monday.
And Cinziano did tweet his support of the ordinance.
Just because they weren't in the room doesn't mean that they weren't supportive.
Yes.
But so we had 5 of 7 city council members there. So the next step for this is to be in City Hall instead of in the community center that we're in. For a final round on this ordinance, and the city council will vote. So, we know how Elizabeth Brown feels since she sponsored this. Shannon Hardin voiced support for this, specifically saying, I think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Mitchell Brown, the councilman, was on the news that night talking about how healthcare workers need protection. Pricilla Tyson was asking questions, talking about the need for the police and all of this. So I do feel across the board. I don't know that we're I don't know that it's going to pass, and I don't know that it would be unanimous if it did. But I do feel that city council really does have a good, solid understanding of the need for this ordinance. So,
and if they didn't, the protesters showed them the need for it last night.
Yeah.
So next Monday, the 20th. I guess it could be a really crazy busy day if the Supreme Court decides to release a decision that morning.
Yeah.
Yay, Mondays. Start the week off with a
SCOTUS,
bang.
not next week.
Yes. Wait, please. So next Monday at 4:00 outside of City Hall, we'll be having a press conference. R. Kelly Copeland, Planned Parenthood folks and city council folks and everybody else will be talking about the ordinance and why we need it at 4:00. And then the council meeting starts at 5. So get there for the 4:00 thing. If you can't get there exactly at 4, as soon as you can get there, go over to City Hall to the council meeting. I think you need an ID to get in the building, but they relax a lot of the security stuff for city council here. So like if I go for a meeting, I have to get like a tag and everything else. But so you will need an ID to get in the building and come and show your support. Wear your purple NARAL t-shirt, wear your pink Planned Parenthood t-shirt, come out and support the ordinance. We need a big public presence there as well.
Right.
And again, just like the State House, it'll start at 5:00, but they do a bunch of ceremonial stuff at the beginning. So the vote will probably happen closer to 6 or 6:30. But get there at 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Or earlier.
And like I said, please do check out the show notes for this if you're on iTunes, or check out our blog, prochoiceohio.com. We will post lots of information. I think the city council full hearing video is going to be on their YouTube channel. We'll embed that video on our blog post. We'll put up the picture from Created Equal and a bunch of other stuff.
The petition.
Yeah. So check that out. Check out our Facebook page. And we'll also tweet the link for this at ProChoiceOH. Okay. So that was a full night.
Yeah.
So going from
in a very emotional week.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to talk about our land show?
Well, I think and I actually personally was having a hard time expressing words.
Right.
It was funny. Like I there are stages of grief, and I went straight from it happening to like angry at the world. I skipped a couple there, and then I backtracked.
Right.
But it really, kind of relating to the city council, it really brought up a lot of things because, with the Colorado Springs shooting last year and then this shooting, now it really just brought home like how I can't keep my community safe. I can't keep my queer community safe. I can't keep my abortion community safe. Like there are not things that we can do. So like the city council thing actually was kind of cathartic this week because it does allow me to maybe better protect my abortion community. And it really has been amazing to see the outpouring of support on the Orlando shooting. It was frustrating to see all the Republicans who like 2 weeks ago were at a conference held by a minister who's actually said that gay people should be killed, should be put to death for their sins. And then they tweet out that they're horrified by this. I'm like, no, actually you're not. Last week you supported it. And you know, I think the fact that his name was Omar and he pledged his, you know, support for ISIS gave them all an out. Well, this wasn't homophobia, it was terrorism. Like, well, it doesn't really matter. That's all connected. Thank you very much. He didn't shoot up Disney World or something like that. He went to a gay club on Latin night to kill gay people of color. So it really just solidifies, I think, the rest of the week, the rest of the summer actually now, because Cleveland Pride is later and Youngstown Pride is later and those kind of things, on showing support for the community. So, you know, now more than ever, come out to your local Pride, come volunteer with us for your local Pride. This weekend is Columbus Pride. It's Friday and Saturday night. Next weekend is next weekend is Cincinnati Pride on Saturday, and then I think you've got the rest of the random dates for the rest of the summer.
Right.
Here.
So Columbus Pride is June 17th and 18th. Cincinnati Pride is June 25th. Youngstown Pride July 17th. Cleveland Pride is August 13th, and Toledo Pride is August 26th. We'll be at all of those. You know, if you want to volunteer with us, please do. Check out the show notes for that. Kelly sent out an email to our supporters about that, and I just want to read a little chunk of it. She said, our mission calls on us to stand for reproductive rights and sexual freedom. Our core belief is that you should have complete control of your own body. We believe that everyone has the right to love whomever they love. We all must be allowed to live without interference from government, threats or shame from those who would judge you, or acts of violence from anyone. In solidarity, Kelly Copeland.
Yeah.
So.
And it really is. I mean, we're all connected in all of these things. And so, you know, showing support for whatever community, however you can, is critical, especially at times like this, and to stay vigilant, because this isn't the beginning. You know, I think a lot of mainstream, you know, lesbian and gay folks in particular have gotten a little complacent. You know, these kind of attacks and violence have gone down, and especially those communities. But in so many communities, people were ignoring the ridiculous number of trans people, especially trans women, who are being murdered almost weekly. I mean, the numbers are astronomical on that. And so, like, when you really kind of put it all together, it didn't come out of the blue. Yeah. And when you see attacks, and when we start winning, we start seeing attacks. And I think that's the other piece of this, is that, you know, people, you know, you can now get married, and people are gaining more rights, and, you know,
yeah, Obama this happened almost, you know, exactly 1 year after the decision to allow gay marriage.
Yeah, and the Obama administration's strong stance on you should be able to use the bathroom that matches your gender identity,
right?
And the Target decision to also allow that. I mean, all of these things have just whipped up.
Yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out too that Dave Daubenmire, who stands outside of Planned Parenthood all the time and harasses women seeking abortion, he also is vehemently anti-gay. He's a huge bigot, and he actually protests outside of Target regarding
inside Target.
Yes. Yeah. He actually got kicked out of Target. Yes.
And he posted a video reaction to what happened in Orlando and seemed gleeful about the fact that 49 LGBT folks were gunned down. So, you know, sometimes these things exist in a vacuum in terms of abortion rights and LGBT rights, but honestly, we have the same people who are out to get us in the abortion world as we've got in the LGBT world. And so those things start to collide when it's like, okay, this really aggressive person is singling out women as well as people in the gay and the trans community, and seems to relish in the violence. So it's kind of scary to go to work every day and know that someone like that is out there, and then having seen what happened in Orlando, it really puts a lot more fear inside of you, not just for yourself, but all of the people in that community that you care about.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, just to kind of go back over what you were saying, Jaime, I don't think there's no sign that anybody could have, other than the guy's wife, prevented this.
No.
You know, it's not that. It's that, you know, culturally, you know, as a country, if we really shine a light on each and every one of these individual acts, it's going to become much more apparent to, you know, I don't mean this politically, but I'm going to use the term swing voters, you know, people who are sort of on the fence as to how to feel about all of this. You know, they don't like shootings, but, you know, maybe they don't quite know how to take the fact that it was in a gay club. They're, you know, they haven't really solidified an opinion on that angle of things. If we can all work together to illustrate exactly how many acts of violence there are, what sort of threats are coming to gay people, to women, to transgender citizens, you know, to really expose how widespread this whole thing is, then we can continue this cultural movement of acceptance and move some of those swing voters, those, you know, those people that are right there on the fence, and continue to win them over, and their kids, you know, because this is something that is having a generational shift. You know, so I think it is very important to, you know, to keep talking about not just the big, you know, the big instances, but all the little ones too.
Well, and I think too, also holding people accountable. I mean, I saw, and we can put it in the show notes, an amazing clip of Anderson Cooper from yesterday.
I watched that last night. That was difficult.
Have you seen it?
I haven't, but I heard about it.
Yeah. So he was interviewing the Florida Attorney General, and she kept talking about how much she cared about the community, and she cared, and she was saddened and blah. And finally it was like, but you were the one who like went to the Supreme Court saying all these, you know, things about how gay marriage is going to bring down civilization. And she tried over time and time again to be like, well, that was just my job. That was just my job.
No.
I was just
Oh my
I was
God.
just representing the 60 whatever % of Floridians who voted for this gay marriage ban. This was just my job. I care about the gay community and all this life loss, and that's what we need to focus on, is these lives lost. And I mean, she tried, and time again, Anderson just pushed right back. Like, he was not gonna let her get away with that. Like, you should really watch the video, and that's what really needs to happen. You know, it's great that Marco Rubio is sending his prayers and thoughts, but like, stop going to the conventions with the minister who talks about how gay people should have the death penalty. Like, actually stop being hateful, not just send your prayers. Right.
No, right before we started this podcast, I was watching Samantha Bee's clip,
I haven't watched it yet, but yeah.
I think, the show notes for this is just going to be
a lot of links.
a lot of YouTube stuff. I'm going to throw that in there too. And so she did 7.5 minutes to open up her show. It just spitting acid, just so furious about all of this, demanding action. And one of the little sound bites she had in there was, I'm pretty sure it was Marco Rubio, if I'm remembering this right, talking about how, well, these things just happened now and it was Orlando's turn. And she's like, Orlando's turn? You know, if you're so accepting of this level of violence on a regular basis that people have to take turns, you know, if you believe that, you should not be a U.S. Senator, Mr. Rubio.
Definitely not our president. Thank you very much.
You know, and she was looking at the governor in Florida and was asked, well, what can we do? And he was like, prayer. And, you know, Wrong answer, bub. So
yeah, I liked there were several like legislators who like refused to do the moment of silence because they're sick and tired of being silenced on it. Like it was such a great, like, yes, we need to remember these people, but the better way to remember them is to make sure that somebody else can't walk into a club with an AR-15 and shoot 50 people.
Right.
That's how we need to remember people, not a moment of silence. And it was really good to see all of those legislators taking a stand like that. Like, no, I'm not going to be silent.
Yeah, I mean, if there had been somebody standing outside that club handing out Bibles that night, that person would just be dead with the rest of the people inside the club. That wouldn't have helped.
No. And of course, they're all saying, well, if somebody inside the club had a gun and they could have shot him first. I'm like, because more guns in a crowded, dark club with 300 people packed in was probably a really fabulous idea.
Right.
Yeah, there's a reason why they don't allow guns in the clubs. Because, maybe it could be in your pocket and
very good.
Yeah. People shoot themselves in the foot literally all the time.
Right. And that's almost the best case scenario.
Yeah. It's a good day when it comes to guns in crowded rooms.
Okay, so there's no high note for this to go out on, but do volunteer with us to go to Pride. We're very, very supportive of the LGBTQ community here in the state of Ohio, and we want to have a big showing of support. So come out with us, even if you can't volunteer a shift. Do stop by our booth at one of the Pride festivals. Say hi. We'd love to see you. So
and then the hearing next week.
So folks can come out to that. We're still looking for ComFest volunteers. You can sign up for that, also in the show notes. And two other events that I can't remember if we talked about last week, but on June 30th in Cleveland is a play called Remarkably Normal. It's a part of a national tour, so there's one show in Cleveland. If you go to our website, prochoice.org, you can the
ProChoiceOhio.org.
ProChoiceOhio.org, yeah. The big moving picture across the front, there's a slide for that to click on the link to get tickets for Remarkably Normal in Cleveland, June 30th. That is a play all about abortion stories, and some of our friends, Jasmine Burnett, and two other individuals whose names I can't come up with right
Somebody
now.
from preterm, I don't know who it is from preterm, and then Allie from Urge will also be there.
Yeah.
Great. So three of our local rock stars are going to be involved in this play, in the Cleveland production of it. So do go to that. And then the big show that you're going to hear much more about in every podcast between now and then is going to be the night of Donald Trump's acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention. Liz Winstead, John Fugelsang, and Frank Conniff with Mystery Science 3000. The three of them are heading up Slurricane Trump at the Bohemian National Hall. It's going to be amazing. They're going to be on stage with Donald Trump's live speech rolling behind them, and they're going to crack jokes the entire night. That's going
to be the only way to survive that speech. You should really buy a ticket, get a cocktail, play some carnival games, and then laugh at Donald Trump, because if you're not laughing, you'll probably be crying.
Yep, that's going to be amazing. That one is comedyrnc.brownpapertickets.com. Or again, check out prochoiceohio.org, our website, for ticket information. $75 gets you into the big show and the VIP reception beforehand. So buy those tickets and come hang out with us that night. There isn't going to be any better, especially not in the city of Cleveland. There won't be any other place to watch Donald Trump's circus.
Come in the cocoon of safety of the Bohemian Theater with all of your friends.
Right. Okay. So, and then once again, to close us out, Amanda's prochoicecats.com.
Yes.
Go order t-shirts and stickers.
Yes, and the catnip tampon toys.
The bloody toys.
Yay.
Okay, and we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.